What's up, guys? It's been a journey to this video.
It has.
We've had shipping delays. We've had me reading other stuff.
I had to move people, so that threw us all off by a week. But you know, we finally read it, and we have some things to say about it. I think
it's a book.
I was actually kind of pleased that we had a little bit extra time after we read the book because I really wanted to kind of develop how I felt about it to give it more accurate, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that says this book's a waste of time. I think there's going to be a lot of people that say like, oh man, I really enjoy the difference and like how different it is from the other volumes. And you know, we're going to discuss all that. But Michael, are we running? We don't want to go like too in depth of like, you know, everything that happens in the book, because like this is a review, not a recap per se. But if we were to like sum it up, so basically the book's kind of divided into two sections outside of the prologue and epilogue. There's the interlude chapters, which are set in the present day, that are 2 weeks after the expedition has ended, so off of the last volume mainline entry. And it's just kind of a mixture of things. You know, we got them a little bit in the dungeon, we got them a little bit in the city, we got them at the manor, and there's just a bunch of you know, interactions between all the characters that we love, as well as jumping back to some of the character developments that we got from the expedition. But outside of that, the second part of the book is kind of split into different characters' backstories or just early life in certain areas. So, you know, I think in order we got Hestia's backstory. We got Belle's backstory, Hestia's backstory, Lily's, Anna's, Welf's, Liu, and then sort of, kind of a little bit of backstory of Harihime and Makoto. They kind of take a different vibe with that, because it kind of, it doesn't necessarily go through their backstories necessarily, as it kind of just sheds more light in their early life. And Harihime at the manor once she was saved by Belle from the pleasure quarters. So, with that being said, Michael, where do you want to jump off on your feelings about this volume?
So let's ask one of the biggest questions. Can you skip this volume and continue on to the next one and read? Well, first off, the next one isn't in English, so good luck finding it.
Yeah.
But I think there are some key things here. There's some status updates. There's some emotional notes that are important for the overall part of things. I think in some ways this book is less vital to the story than book 8 was. So I would say that this is the least vital of the canon books that we've read so far. But as far, that's a different conversation than to the quality of the book itself.
Right. Which, just to clarify real quick, in case you don't know, or you're like, you know, because in a lot of ways, I think Volume 15 is a great entrance point to the series. If you were just like wanting to jump into the middle of a story, I don't know why you would ever do that. I would never recommend that. But let's just say you were one of those people, right? And this I would consider like a good entry point. And what makes it different from Volume 8 is that Volume 8, even though it was sort of, I guess, before this one came out, related as the side story volume in the mainline series, it still has an overarching plot that connects to certain things that, you know, jump off to the next arc after it. This one, I think Michael's pretty on point with his what he said there, because it's, to me, there's a lot of moments in it that I'm like, dude, this would, if you're loving the rest of the series, I don't know why you wouldn't pick it up just for the interlude parts, because I think they are really enjoyable. I love them a lot, and I do think there's some information that it would be better just to get it in this book instead of just being sort of lost at the start of the next volume or whenever that new information pops up in the later volumes. But, you know, this book is still relatively new. It's $15, you know, roughly. So is it really worth just reading the interludes? And I feel like I'm saying ludes instead of interludes, but you know, you get what I'm saying.
L-U-D.
Yeah, just to read those chapters for $15, I would say no. This is one that I think, if anything, if you were, you know, on a budget or whatever, I'd recommend just picking it up when the next one releases, because the interlude chapters, they're very short, especially in comparison to the other chapters. So you really could probably just take like maybe 40 minutes, an hour maybe, of your time and just read this one right before you jump into the next volume. And I think that would probably be better anyway, because once the next volume releases, this one will probably be discounted a lot. So it'd probably be worth more bang for your buck if you waited. But I don't want that to downplay any, because the interlude chapters are actually bangers. Like there's nothing crazy that happens this volume. There's no really action per se. But I would say the interlude chapters are like probably an F.F.A. or pure Ecstasy just on their own.
There's some great moments, yeah. And that's probably one of the major takeaways here is there's going to be some backstory. And luckily, we love these characters and we're invested in them, even though we've seen some backstory. Probably, I don't know what my favorite would be, but I like Welf's one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different perspectives that you get from the backstories, but it is something. This is probably the first Danmachi book that I won't say you have to buy. Don't have lunch on Thursday to pick up this book right now.
There is some choices that the author makes, not from like a story standpoint of like what he showcased in the volume, but just from like an execution as like a novelist. He even says in his afterword that a lot of the like backstory type material was written for different things. I believe he said specifically for the special edition of the first season of the anime. And then I remember seeing actually part of the backstories. I remember seeing Belle and Hestia's backstory in the Danmachi mobile game like 2.5 years ago. I think I've even referenced it, and I didn't even know it was going to be showed up later. So maybe that was where partially people thought we read ahead or something like that. But, to me, I'm always like, I don't think he did anything wrong necessarily. I think just not knowing that before I bought the book felt a little like, that's sort of sly. But
yeah, he could have. On the it's all about sales and marketing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he's successful, so I think hopefully he's not like struggling financially or anything. He still has creative freedom completely over it. But it was kind of like a sales pitch thing where they didn't talk. This is a collection of side stories about the backstory. Side stories and backstories of various characters. But I guess they kind of said that in the back of the book.
Yeah, which again, like I don't think it put your expectations to a level where you're like, oh, this is trash because it didn't reach that. Because like you said, on the back of the book, it still says it's about their backstories, and it still does deliver that, as well as showing like the interludes that we talked about. It's just that, the fact that it's not completely new stuff, especially if you're somebody that's a fanatic fan, and you've maybe already searched out the other places where this information and like the story was showcased before, it's probably going to be a little bit of a letdown. Now, the one thing I will say too on top of that is there is a thing that the author says in the afterword where he talks about like the theme of the book, and I don't know, I probably should reference it just so I'm not really misquoting him, but he says like the theme of the book is the contrast between inexperience of the past and the maturity of the present. And he goes on to say like he thought that or at least he always sees like the most enjoyable volumes as like the ones that show how far they've come and like just like the journey, right? And like reflecting that just like their past and where they come. I don't know why I said that twice. But he says that, right? And I think that's probably what led him to do some of the backstory chapters. To me personally, I felt it was almost like almost a disservice to himself, because there's so many times where I've read all of the other books that we've read, and I'm constantly thinking about the past things that they've done, because he's already wrote the characters so well that all these things kind of just stand out as memorable to like what their character is. So I don't really know if he really necessarily needed to show some of this information in a volume at all. I think he could have easily just wrote more interlude chapters to fill volume 15 along with the already per mention interlude chapters we get, because there's a lot of moments in the interlude that I'm thinking of like the connections that he's trying to display in the backstory chapters without even reading the backstory chapters, or before I got to them, I should say, because I did read them. But that's just something that I feel personally. I don't know if I'm alone in that.
Yeah, so this book does have some bombshells. I think information and scenes and whatever. Not too much to reveal here. One thing that we've been talking about is timeline. That's the one thing in the Danmachi universe that's kind of like, wait, what? So it is, in this book, it is confirmed, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, that from volume 1, or previously when Belle enters the city, to now has been exactly 6 months. So Belle is we're not actually. I shouldn't say what level he is now because if you haven't read the book, you don't know.
Right.
But he's pretty strong for being 6 months older. And I think do we know if he's turned 15? I don't think we've.
I don't think he's turned
talked
15
about his
yet.
birthday yet.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure it's probably listed in some stat thing of like what his actual birthday is, and we could probably argue if it's 14 or 15. But I know at the start he's supposed to be 14. But yeah, that's a cool one. Although I will say, I wish. I mean, it's kind of cool that we get like these little hints, but I don't really know if the author should really ever say like how much time has passed in like the scope of the whole timeline, just because. Like at the beginning of the book, it says like, all right, we're 2 weeks after the expedition. Like, do you know how long 2 weeks is compared to 6 months? Like that's a sizable chunk out of the 6 month time period. So like when he does stuff
Don't
like
add
that,
it all up.
I know because it probably doesn't fit. But that's just one thing in there, right?
Yeah, I think it was like
funny.
a month after the war game or something like that.
Yeah, so if you factor in like it's been a month, and who knows how much time the span of like volume 8 was too. Mm-hmm. So I mean, yeah, it gets a little fragile when you start looking at it in depth timeline wise. But there is information though that, again, like we've said, it's not like huge news, but it is, I think, much more enjoyable to get this information how it's presented in the interludes instead of maybe just finding out about it in the next volume. I do love, just because you mentioned Belle's level, I won't say it either, but I do love when we are getting a status update. Hestia's like, wow! And Belle's like, well, yeah, because I almost died like 8 times. So yeah. That's great. But there's definitely a lot of surprises, not only for like the main Familia, but also characters outside of that, which I don't know how long we really want to make this review side, but I will say the best parts of the volume are like really easy for me. I don't know about you, like which ones you would pick. I think there's some obvious choices there. I think when you said Welf's backstory being your favorite out of the backstory ones, I would agree. Welf's one is cool, but I think it's, again, this is kind of where the only reason why I brought up the author's thing is because I think he misses the mark, because I think what I got out of the backstories was not so much seeing how far they've come, but more so interested in like where their place was in the world before he came to know Belle and everybody, but also like their past connections, what that might mean for the future if he wants to expand upon like any world building stuff. But definitely the parts with Liu got me. I will say Liu plays a big part of the volume's, I guess, I don't want to say arc, but just like the events that are run down.
Yeah, that scene between Liu outside of and Belle outside the restaurant is hilarious.
Yeah. I also love after she accidentally does something to Belle, she stares down some like passerbys and she's like, forget what you saw. It's so good. It's so cute and so funny, and I just love seeing this side of Liu that we hadn't seen in the beginning part of the series, and just how she's really blossomed as a character.
I think I don't know if it's obviously not Eyes because no one cares about her. It's either Hirohime or Lily, where they're having a conversation, and I think it's like with Cassandra and Daphne, and then obviously Liu again.
Oh, yeah.
And Lily's like, oh, he's got another one.
Yeah. It's like, have another drink.
That is an underrated scene with Cassandra, though. I think that's pretty cute and fair that's how she would feel that Belle finally believed her. Yeah,
I do like the little moments he gives a lot of the side characters. Like Cassandra's got a good moment. I think Aina, as well as Aina is not a character that I particularly care about at all, but I think one thing outside of having a good moment that connects back to the past arc is kind of reminding me, I guess, of where her placement or like what her role is as a character, because I feel like in the last few volumes have been like, what's with this character? I mean, like, what is she really contributing to? Because we know like Oranos and Fels has connection to Hestia Familia, so if they get in any trouble guild-wise, they would be the go-to people, not her. But obviously it was just me, like, maybe just not thinking about it, or maybe it was just like an oversight on my end. But I do really like him showcasing through Belle talking with her that she's just as essential to his survival of the expedition as, you know, his own wits and like experiences brought him. So I do appreciate showcasing just the importance of what that character has to offer, because I think it's one that I don't particularly look at Aina as a standout character, but even showing, you know, a little bit of polish on her end is great.
Yeah, so another thing that, it's not really a disappointment, but it's something that we definitely got wrong about our predictions if we go back. Freya is not have a heavy presence in this novel. No. Hopefully, obviously we're concentrating on the backstory. But hopefully we'll get to see more of them. Pretty much for the most part, he's phased out Eyes Familia. Whatever, Loki Familia.
Loki Familia, yeah.
Yeah, from the main series for the most part. I mean, they're still there as characters and doing stuff, but we don't focus on them as much as we did in like 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments with surrounding the Loki Familia. I think it's... So, like, there's one scene, again, like, they're at the Benevolent Mistress celebrating some things, and there is... a moment where kind of Belle is like, oh, I wish Loki Familia was here. It's like he invited them to like his birthday party and they didn't show, and he was like upset about it. But I mean, I don't know, like that, like me as like a fan, just how I feel about like the Loki Familia characters. I'm like, come on, Eyes, or come on, Belle. Don't worry about Eyes. Don't worry about their Familia. They're trash, you know. But yeah. I really do think that's a good moment because, you know, there is a lot of kind of unanswered questions about their relationship and their dynamic that he hasn't really gotten.
How is the dwarf going to react to like Welf and them after they had like the like it just doesn't, it's not going to be compatible.
Now, go ahead.
That's all I was going to say. That's fine.
I was just going to say you made me remember there is a scene when it's in one of the early interlude chapters, but it's when Belle and Welf are walking, and I'll keep this spoiler free, but they're walking. And like as they're walking through the city, Belle's getting surrounded by like people that are like, hey, you know, you're ex little rookie, good job, you know, like I liked what you did, and keep going, you know. They're like giving the finger guns, give them a salute, here's the potato crisp, you know, the like everything except for like the bowing on their knees, right? And it's funny, and also I like it in some regards because, you know, Belle is such a likable guy, and like, you know, he fights for the right reasons, everything, so it is well deserved. But from like a story standpoint, I kind of feel a little conflicted that there's not anybody that questions his actions during the things that happen in the Xeno arc. I feel like having some people praise him and stuff is fine, you know. Obviously not everybody saw the events that happened, but I feel like not showing at least one or two, or maybe even a group of people that are just kind of like smirking at like disgust or just like scoffing off what he did, I feel like that's kind of a misstep, you know, because it doesn't really give any lasting repercussions of what that arc meant, at least not yet that we've seen. I
understand what you mean. I think this is just off the top of my head thinking about it for a little bit momentarily. I think the only problem if he showed that is the author. I don't know if the author would be like, oh no, these people who dislike Belle, they have to be part of the evils again. And they'd be like, no!
Yeah, to get off the evils.
Not again.
Let Liu have her peace.
So I think like they need to make, which maybe the Loki Familia, not gonna lie, but they need to make human villains that aren't like related to the evils, which they haven't really done that yet.
For sure. And there should be people. They should be people that don't have a like an overstepping plan to the city, or like having effect to other familias outside of their own, because you know, like for instance, if it was like a Xeno thing, right, you would be questioning like, okay, well, why isn't the guild like hiring other familias to step in here? I think like having a more personal human enemy would really add something. But I mean, that's kind of getting into like discussion stuff and speculation, but that is one thing that it would be cool to see them do, and kind of step away from the evils, because we really don't have any we don't have any human enemies that aren't evil or ex-evils. But yeah, I don't know. There's not really much more, I guess, I could really touch on without going into spoilers. So this would be, I guess, a perfect time to give a rating before we get into maybe some speculation in another video, or maybe at the end of this. But Michael, what would you give this volume?
So I'm kind of going back and forth here between a worth it and I gotta have it. Honestly, I think it's a worth it. I think it's a high tier worth it for sure. which if you don't know our ratings, they might be in the description.
Yeah, they probably will be.
But yeah, don't go out and buy this volume right now. If you're looking for more material, if you finish the anime and you're looking to catch up with the books, it's a good volume to read. It's some background information, and it has some cool moments.
Yeah.
But don't expect too much from it. It's not going to be a book 11, a book 12, a book 13, a book 14. It's a different kind of book, and if you come in with expectations like it's going to be a book 8, which we pretty much did, then you're not going to be too disappointed. And if you're... I was going to say a true fan, but I don't want to be too elitist there. If you really like the series, I think you're going to like the book. I think you're going to like the book as well.
Well, like I said, the interlude chapters, I think, have some material in it that is super enjoyable, and as a fan, I would say it's even like F.F.A. and Pure Ecstasy level. But then I realized I had finished the book, and I didn't get one iconic line that's typically in these volumes. You know the one where the marinara, the strings have been cut, you know? And for that, I think this book deserves a garbage. It's really terrible. It's really a disservice, really, for thinking that we wouldn't see that. But no, seriously though, it's a good book. I think Michael hits the nail on the head where if you're looking at it, as a whole, including every bit of it, I would say it's a high tier worth it as well. I would recommend, like I said earlier in the video, wait for a sale maybe, and if you don't have like spare money to throw around. But I think it does add a nice little setup to the potential of the next arc or just the next volume in general, and I can't wait to see what that might be. Michael was talking about Hestia Familia, and the cover for the next volume is Freya. It's hype, so I can't wait to see. But yeah, guys, we'll come back. We might do a short little discussion video, talking spoilers, But
eventually,
we do that anyway. So I know you expect it.
We got anywhere from 6 to 18 months before the other one gets translated. So later, Addicts.
Peace.